In a bloody, violent, and mentally draining war, you wouldn't expect a soldier to use a sword, wouldn't you? You would expect him to use something more effective, like a gun, so that he can actually kill people in the war. Yet, how many of us students apply this same logic when it comes to our exams? Especially when the type of subject we study requires vastly different study methods. So, what is a good mindset for studying? You might think that a good mindset for studying may encompass something like discipline, where you need to sit down and study every single day to have good grades and to have like effective study sessions. But not really. Something that should be in your mindset for studying should be how am I going to find the most effective ways of studying for a particular subject? That should be one of your main focuses when it comes to studying. In one of the modules of my course, I talk about how I apply my own mindset into the subjects I'm learning. For example, when it comes to a subject like physics, I spend a lot of the studying time to understand the concept so that I can truly understand what the concept is talking about so that I can apply it effectively during an exam. Whereas a subject like mathematics might just require more practice. Even if the subjects are similar in the sense that they're all like science and mathematics subjects, the way you study them can be very different when you change the subject that you're studying. And this should be part of the mindset that you have when you study for a certain subject. You shouldn't just study a subject. You should have not only the correct mindset of like working hard or being disciplined or like ensuring that you're consistent, but you should also have the mindset of you should visualize the exact kind of study methods that you will use when it comes to studying various subjects. You can think of it as a lock that requires different keys to open. You can't use different keys to open the same lock. Each lock has a particular type of key that you need for the lock to open. Not only must you have the discipline and like the hard work to like acquire this key, you also need the mindset so that the shape of the key is correct so that you can open the lock effectively. But how do you find but what are the keys and the locks in the context of like studying and exams? Well, keys are your study methods that you use for each subject. Find out what are the correct study methods for each subject. You can ask your teachers, you can search on Google, or you can do your own reflection. In my course, I do outline my own answers for like the type of study methods you should use for each subject. For example, with chemistry, I talk a lot about how you're supposed to use like visualization in terms of like pictures and diagrams because it's a lot of drawings in chemistry, especially as it gets harder and harder. Whereas something like mathematics would just require you to practice more and requires more deliberate practice. And I personally outline on how like specific I get with these kind of study methods. But you should also do your own reflection, and that is definitely one way. Uh, that's one way you can really enhance your mindset when it comes to studying for various exams. And another analogy I would like to tell you is think of you having to cut down a tree and you have an axe. Not only you need to choose the correct type of tool, which is an axe. Obviously, you can't use a screwdriver to cut down a tree. In the sense that your study methods need to be the correct study methods in that particular subject, which is your axe to cut down a tree or a key to open a lock. But your tools also have to be very effective in the sense that you need to sharpen your axe. Not only must you use the correct study methods for each subject, but these study methods need to be extremely effective for so that you're able to study the subject as efficiently as possible and so that you can spend the least time possible in studying the subject. Because as students, we have a lot of subjects to study for, and we can't afford any like inefficiency in our studying because we have a lot to do as students. But how do you get this? How do you sharpen your axe? Well, the best way is to get feedback from teachers on like the study methods that you use to study a subject. Just ask your teachers. They've been doing this for years and they really know, especially the teacher that is teaching the same subject for a very long time. They would know the best way to acquire the information in that subject. And if you don't really like your teachers, you can always ask seniors of yours who are quite smart and they would really have their own ways of studying each subject. And if I were you, I would ask both parties. I would ask my teachers and I would also ask the smart seniors. And this is something you should really do before you start embarking on a subject that you're learning. Because when you have the correct mindset and you have the correct tools, it makes studying much easier. And if you want like a shortcut in terms of like how to get these study methods, you can check out my course in the description below. Or if not, you can really just ask your teachers, ask your friends, and search on the internet what are the best ways you can study a subject for you to be extremely efficient and effective, not only in the exam of the subject, but really learning the subject as a whole. And this will actually allow you to take away more things from learning the subject. And you will just learn more in general. And that's a good thing because it helps you see why a certain subject like is important in the world. Let's say like mathematics, you might think that it's a bit like, how am I going to use this in the future? But when you really learn and internalize a subject, you you understand why. Because you're actually learning. You're not just like memorizing it and like vomiting it out during the exam. But this also works just to increase like the marks that you get in an exam. So it's a win-win situation. So I really urge you to employ the mindset of not just like studying every day or like being disciplined, but to really understand that the way you study a subject using like specific study methods for each subject is very important. And that will actually save a lot of time. Like in your perspective, it will save like countless hours. And throughout the course of a whole year, that is a very big advantage that you have against other students. Also, another thing I want to talk about is the effectiveness of practice papers. In a book that I read, which is called Deep Work by Cal Newport, it stated that deliberate practice in the thing you want to get good at is extremely important and is the best way you can become good at something. The reason why doing many practice papers is extremely important is because you are directly practicing questions in this like timed format, which is what you need to get good at during an exam. As human beings, is very to get good at something, we really need the practical hands-on aspect of like what we are learning. If we want to like be good at building tables, we can't just learn about it. We really need to like practice building tables so that we understand like the nuances of like you should like screw the screw. You should screw like this screw that is for the platform first before you like screw in this other screw that is for the leg. These little intricacies, it adds up towards the bigger picture. And this differentiates like the smarter students from the students who are not that smart. And it's really important to have this deliberate practice of doing practice papers. And another reason why it's so efficient and effective is because it's difficult to do practice papers because of like the mental fatigue that it gives your brain. This is like the analogy of like going to the gym. You go to the gym, you lift weights, it's fatiguing. And you kind of know that the more fatigued you feel, the more muscle you will make, like during your recovery and like after you eat like a lot of protein. And the same goes for exam. It's like exercise for your brain. And if your brain now, with your current study methods, doesn't really feel like mentally fatigued and challenged after each of your study sessions, then you're doing something wrong. That might be a symptom of the fact that your study sessions and your study methods are not challenging and hence are not improving like your actual like intelligence in that subject. You should use this mental fatigue as a symptom that you're saving time, but you're not sacrificing like the amount of effort you put for it. And even if it's mentally fatiguing, you always have enough time to rest in between study sessions because of how more efficient and effective you are whenever you're studying. That is a very good thing. And as students, that is the one thing we need to be able to ace every exam in every subject. Because as students, we have a lot of it. We have a lot of exams, and we can't afford to spend all of our time on one subject. And this is the reason why we need to be effective and efficient with our study methods. And the only benefit is not really that you get higher grades, but this is how you win competition. This is how you become smarter than the smartest students in your class. This is how you get to be the top 5 or the top 2% in your country in terms of like your exam results. If there's something that you don't really care about and you just care about like passing or getting an A, that's completely fine. Is this something I care about? Not really. I would just be happy getting all A's. Me personally, I don't really need to be like the top 2 or top 5% in the country. I feel that the return on investment is not really worth it. But if you have the correct mindset and your study methods are engineered in such a way that it tackles the very subject that you're taking, and you get good at enhancing this strategy, and you keep getting feedback by your teachers, and you just keep working on it if with this efficient and effective study sessions, this is how you get to a certain level of academic excellence that some would consider crazy. And you don't need to be smart to achieve this level of success. You just need to have the correct mindset and the correct study methods for each subject. It's really that simple. This is how I managed to get to the eighth best university in the world as an average student. And I was really an average student for like most of my studying during when I was like 14, 15, 16 years old. It was only during when I was like end of 16 or like start of my year one during junior college, which is like the 2 years leading up to the GCE A levels. I think in some countries they give you 3 years of studying before you take the A levels. But in the country that I'm in, Singapore, we actually narrowed it down to 2 years because we're Asian, I guess. But it was really when that 2 year journey started and I questioned myself on these mindset and like study methods. And the fact that I was pissed off like studying for an extremely long period of time every single day. And I felt that was just inefficient, man. Because it's really about how much your brain is challenged in every single study session. And that causes you to improve. And with that mindset and that process, this is how I was able to become one of the top students in my own school. And this is what led me to go into NUS, which is the eighth best university in the world. It was only because of this very method that I'm talking about today. And if you want to adopt this quick and have like way more efficiency and like remove all the obstacles in acquiring this mindset and study methods for each subject, then I recommend you check out my course. You don't need to. By all means, you can figure this out yourself and you'll probably get to like a good level. But if you need this now and you don't want to go through the same obstacles and you want to save time, and this time that can be used in studying the subjects correctly now, by all means, you can check out my course in the description below. If not, that's completely fine. And this is really the way you should be studying in order to get grades that are consistently high and to get a realization that getting good grades is not that difficult. You just need the correct method and the correct exam strategy for every single subject that you take. Cheers.